right, let's go ahead and call tonight's work session to order. Resolution contracting authority. Alex, I assume.
Yes, Mayor and Council. So we would like to chat with you this evening about our current contracting authority and limits. And we've done some research and put together a staff report for you this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and let you will make that presentation, and then we'll go ahead and take any questions after that.
Right, Mayor, Council, thank you. I'm going to run through kind of some background information here. I'll give you an overview of our public contracting resolution that's been in place for the last just over 5 years now, and open it up for your questions. So Resolution 17-12 establishes the public contracting guidelines for the city. It does primarily three things. First is it adopts the Oregon Attorney General's model rules for public contracting. That's pretty standard across the entire state. Those are essentially the guidelines that the state has developed for municipal agencies in conducting their public contracting. Additionally, it sets different amounts for capital and non-capital procurements. And additionally, it sets the limits of the purchasing authority of the city manager and dictates when, based on contract amount, the authorization of city council is required via council action. Currently, and I'll give you an overview of procurements and the different thresholds from the state's perspective. So for any procurement that's estimated to cost more than $10,000 in a single year, that requires city staff to obtain at least 3 competitive quotes. That's for any type of procurement, whether it be construction, goods and services, design work.
And I would just interject real briefly that when we go to get those quotes, sometimes we're not always able to get 3 quotes, but we always make the attempt. If for some reason we don't receive 3, that's documented and noted in the file. So.
For architecture and engineering, as it's classified under state statute, that includes any sort of design, consulting design services, engineering projects being the most common under that category. So for those projects, anything that is between $10,000 and $100,000, you can use the get 3 competitive quotes and make your selection based on price. Now, once one of those projects is estimated to be above $100,000, then it requires a formal RFP process. For construction, again, similar, it's got a $100,000 threshold. When you're below that, you could use competitive quotes. Above that, it needs to be competitively and formally bid, which is basis for awarding those contracts is always low bid in the state of Oregon. Additionally, I'll just make a note here for construction projects, the limit for, I guess, the prevailing wage threshold is $50,000. So if a construction project is going to cost more than $50,000, the contractor has to abide by prevailing wage law. That's the intention is to ensure competition against out-of-state contractors. So currently, as of August 2022, the cumulative inflation since this resolution 17-12 was passed is 21.4%. City staff have seen price increases from inflation, supply chain disruptions, and labor shortages, all of which have resulted in increased costs, thus leading to higher contract prices, whether they be for construction services, for the procurement of equipment, or engineering design services. Due to the higher costs, but the limits being what they are, we've got $40,000, $30,000 is the limit for the the A&E category, engineering, design, consulting. The limit for capital purchases is $50,000. What staff has seen is an increasing number of contracts that require council's action simply because of that dollar threshold is being broken more and more often because of the higher costs we're seeing. We expect that trend to continue. It's something that's affecting every agency across the country. And as a part of our research, we looked into what are these limits looking like in other municipalities.
Brandon's trying to get in, but all he hears is silence. Sorry. Your phone number's not in the city phone, so I can't send it to you. It's okay.
So we looked at 30 different cities in Oregon, majority of them in the metro and valley area. And you can find that capital and non-capital limit by city in Exhibit B. You'll see I've organized this based on sorted for population. Scappoose is about right in the middle. One thing that's interesting to know is except for two cities on this list, 28 of these cities just have the same limit amount set for capital and non-capital. There are two cities that break that trend, and that would be the city of Cornelius and Scappoose. Staff is requesting or would like to discuss with the council if raising those limits to $75,000 for both capital and non-capital is of interest. Additionally, and you'll see this on the Exhibit B where there's no limit listed, for the cities of Dallas, Troutdale, and Banks. Each of those cities have no limit as long as a project is in the approved budget for that year. So in essence, each of these projects, the city staff does not come to council with unbudgeted projects. The first pass through what's going to be spent for years in the budget development process fiscal year prior. City conducts its procurement process. Once that has been completed, city staff comes to council and requests authorization to enter into a contract if it's above either the capital or non-capital limits. Due to the number of these contracts that we are seeing higher costs for, there are more projects that we are coming to you with and requesting for explicit authorization, even though the project has been budgeted already. For example, we had 2 contract approvals at our last meeting, both of them just over the $30,000 limit, so they required council's authorization. I'm open to any questions, should you have them.
Exhibit B. You have Exhibit B.
Yeah, it's on the back page 4.
I saw it. Did it say exhibit?
It's marked as page 4.
Oh, it does say, okay, got it, yeah, got it. I knew it was there, I just didn't see the B.
Mayor? Joel, do you know off the top of your head for this calendar year, how many projects have went over the current $50,000 limit on capital but stayed under 75?
Not off the top of my head. I think the police vehicles is probably what comes to mind. 'Cause those vehicle purchases usually land somewhere between 30 and 60.
Okay.
I have a question, and not necessarily the threshold, but what's your process on when you say three quotes? Where is it that you search for those? Is it like a Google search? Do you use local, the chamber membership? What is it? What is the process of that?
Typically, if it is for, let's say for engineering and design services for a city project, I'll take a water line, for example.
Like a public work?
Correct. So typically the first place we start is with firms that we've worked with in the past or have done similar work for the city in the past. I think for engineering and design, there are easily 5 to 6 firms that are, that we've had a past history with. Some of them may be interested. The first step is reaching out to those firms that you think might be interested in and invite them to submit a scope and fee estimate.
Yeah, I'm just, this is kind of my line of work, what I do. And so I know that with the administration, serve more small businesses, diverse businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and it has gone trickled down to state level, right? So I'm just wondering if as a city we can trace that our procurement policy, not just the threshold of 50K to 75K, but also the procurement process of making sure that we do procure small businesses, local businesses, especially, and diverse businesses.
Mayor,
Counselor.
I just have a clarifying question for Councilor Santiago. So are you, and actually clarification for city staff as well. Do we have a point system that gives preference points to minority-owned businesses, small businesses, things like that?
Not at the informal process, but for formal processes like an RFP or an invitation to bid, which is for construction, there are provisions within state law that allow that. Did you have anything to add to that?
Okay, so I view that kind of as a separate topic, so I won't spend much time on that for me, but I have a question just for context. What is what was the idea between having different limits between capital and non-capital limits?
That is a great question.
Don't know.
We do not know. That is not one we could find an answer to.
I think.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe the man. We don't know. Yeah, did not
I
understand.
think
why
that
that
there
was-
was a desire by the.
I was here too, so I,
27.
died.
yeah. Maybe it just was,
I think
maybe it was just pitched to us that way and, yeah.
Yeah, I
no
can't
idea.
remember
We
if it was
couldn't-
that or if it was, there was they didn't want too many contracts just going without council being aware of it, so that it was kind of lower the. Do something like that, but I mean, that's 5 years ago.
We couldn't find anything on record that would have explained that.
What were the rates prior to that?
I think they were,
Very low, 10,000.
yeah, but I think it was 10.5. I think there was I think that even before that, there was a separate threshold. And I think it was from that previous time that one came from. That came out of is everything. The year or two after
Mm-hmm.
Hank and city manager.
Mayor, maybe the more appropriate question is to legal counsel. Is there, or anybody that has any information to share on this, is there a reason why we should entertain a different limit in between capital and non-capital?
Not that I'm aware of, but you guys are definitely, the norm is to have consistency just because it's easier for people to remember. And, use the correct number. So if both numbers are 50 or 75 or whatever they are, 100, then people don't have to consider whether it's a capital or non-capital project. They just know that that's what we do. And lately, what the trend that I've noticed, and this is kind of unusual as compared to how it's traditionally been, is that you get more bids if you do kind of the informal outreach to people. It's because a lot of the different folks are busy enough with other projects that they're just not bidding. And I mean, I think the last contract I looked at, we did get 3 bids, but that was kind of the outlier. What I'm seeing more common is 1 or 2 bids, and in some jurisdictions, they're not getting any.
It appears that we're the only jurisdiction that has a separate capital, non-capital.
No, they're
One,
There's
I think there's one
more.
other one.
at least on this list, and that's City of Cornelius.
Okay, Cornelius.
Mr. Mayor. So I guess really, I think that it just comes down to a couple of different things on here, because really the big thing becomes is timeline. So Alex, how long does it take for you to go through or you guys, the city, to go through a process of when you have to make requests to the city council for? How much longer does that add for a timeline?
Well, it does depend a little bit, but, depending on when the bidding timeline is or something like that, it could add 2, 3 weeks. Usually is kind of the typical thing. So if for some reason we miss a council meeting or something comes up and we're not able to get something to you, then I'd say that's probably a typical delay, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 weeks, which in the past wasn't as big of a deal, but now with the supply chain issues that we're seeing, it is becoming a bigger problem, especially with things like we've noticed, like with vehicle purchases. There have been times where if we didn't essentially put money down and secure that vehicle right away, we were going to lose it and we probably wouldn't be able to pick up another one for a year. So we are finding that, unfortunately, just because of, market conditions, that it is becoming more problematic. So it's really become a issue of efficiency and, getting the things that we need in a timely manner.
Here, I just have one more question. OAG's model rules for public contracting. The way I read this does not universally apply to city and county governments. This is something that we chose to adopt. Am I reading that correct? Or is that state law that applies to all municipalities?
As far as public contracting limits, or
Just know
There's mention in here in this council action status report that we're looking at that the city has adopted the Oregon Attorney General's model rules for public contracting. The word adopting to me implies that it doesn't universally apply to us unless we adopt it. Am I understanding that correctly?
if we were to not follow the AG's guidelines regarding public contracting, what it would create is legal risk for us. What their guidelines do is essentially create a safe harbor. So it's like getting an opinion from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission in advance, participating in something. The benefit is that you get the safe harbor. So by following their best practices guidelines, then we're within the safe confines.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we've done that. I'm just wondering if that was something that was more optional than it was required by state law. But I think you've clarified that the point's made that we are better served by adopting their guidelines. Thank you.
Well, and going through those guidelines, they all seem to be pretty good to me. I didn't have any problem with it. My concern was 2 things. One is how are we kept informed about spending and that sort of thing? Just expenditures. This is one, having it on the agenda that we deal with is one way of us being informed. And so I assume that there'll be other ways of getting that information, but that was my first concern. Second concern is the 15% leeway that we have. That can be quite a bit of money there. And I'm just wondering if that should be less than 15%. In other words, if a bid comes in 15% greater than what was budgeted, then we can go ahead and approve it, or Alex can. And I'm sort of thinking that we'd like to have it approved if it goes beyond the budget. That's my thought.
Ultimately, I think, just by knowing the thresholds that you were mentioning, it's very normal. I mean, 110,000 above, 50,000, 100K. There, most of the larger 8 cities have this type of threshold. I don't see it as a need to change that. That's my opinion. The thing that I would suggest maybe having the capital not limit and non-capital match, just for a reference. And then another thing too, I think we meet often enough, twice a month, that would be approved by council. So in my opinion, I think thresholds are fine. They
They
are,
are, or?
as they are, with what he'll mentioned, the 10K, 3 quotes, 10K to 100K, 3 quotes from A&E, 100K RFP and construction 100K. And so those are, if those are what they is now, then I think they'll be fine.
So we're not proposing to change those.
Not proposing to change?
No.
Oh, I thought that's what,
No,
oh, okay,
no, those would stay the same.
okay. Thought that's what the whole thing was when he was mentioning it. Okay. Apologies.
Oh, no, that's what, I just wanted to clarify that, yeah, we're not discussing changing or proposing to change any of that.
I see. Okay. Oh, okay, so that's what the proposal is, 75K.
Well, I'm gonna, the one part that I don't like in here is that I think that all contracts with a value of more than $75,000 in a calendar year must be approved by city council, should be what it is. I'm not 100% comfortable saying contracts exceeding 75,000 in a calendar year, but identified in the adopted budget that have been approved by the city council through the budgetary process shall be deemed being approved by the city council. Given that the contract value is within 15% of the amount identified, I think over $75,000 probably should come before the council. The approval, the reason we're raising the limit is so that we're talking about raising the limit is so that we can, because of that increased in cost, but I still think that it should continue to be, just because it's approved in the budget, that's a budget document. Should still, over 75, should still come before the council. That's just my opinion. And those aren't typically emergency items. There's an emergency, we've been able to, declare emergencies or whatnot. And there, so.
So this is just for report at this time. Is there anything further to discuss?
I think they're looking for direction on what to bring back.
I had another question. So currently, right now, with anything that's in the budget, if it's currently budgeted, no matter what, it has to come back to council currently.
If it's
If it's-
over the,
Yeah. the
If
threshold.
it's over the threshold at all.
Yes, so,
Yeah,
right, so
threshold.
any item, whether it's been approved, right, through the budget process by council or not, if it's above the threshold, it comes back for approval. Again,
Yes.
that's accurate.
I just think that it should stay that way, where anything above the threshold needs. I don't have a problem raising the threshold to 75K.
Mayor, can I clarify with you? I'm sorry, it's just because I don't forget I don't remember what you just said on one aspect. So you're saying that if it is under 75,000, that it does not need to come back to us?
Well, currently that's so if we approve the 75,000 increase, all we did, then yeah.
And for clarification, this is for things that are already line items in the cities, but already included in the city's adopted budget that we've already reviewed and adopted.
Yeah, typically, yeah.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
So yeah, in the proposed language, it would pretty much really, I mean, in a lot of ways, there wouldn't be a limit because it's de facto saying that if it's been approved in the budget, there's no point in even having a limit if it's automatically approved.
That's what I'm
Side-
getting at,
yeah.
is that if we've already reviewed it once and approved it and there's no increase in it, then why would it come back?
When it's
already-
over 75, just the amount, dollar amount. I think that when we're doing the budget, we're not going into, we don't see as many details as to what that's an estimated price. I think that one of the things we're seeing is a lot of estimated prices right now are way above what we thought they would be. I know in 2008, 2009, and after that, estimates were way below what they used to expect. I think the sidewalk project was a third of what the grant was for. So I'm more comfortable for the council when it's over $75,000 to see it forum in a public forum. That money's being spent. To me, the budget is, this is what we're guessing, this is what we're planning, but that's the detail. And I don't see a reason why it should be precluded from coming back before council. If it's not, then why have the limit at all?
So remind me, I think the cars, the vehicles were one of those items that were not the budget. Car was available and needed to be purchased, right, at that time. So it wasn't a line item, what I recall, right?
Yeah.
In those cases, it would still come to council because they weren't a line item.
So under the current thresholds, yes, depending on the amount of, it would depend on the amount of the car, but arguably, probably, if you had raised it to 75,000, it was below that, then no, that wouldn't. But right in this instance, because it was, 60 and the capital is 50, then yes, it came before you. And so, but in that instance, in order to actually secure those vehicles, and I called each of you about this, was I had to commit to buying one just to hold the second and then come back to you for approval of the second. So
I
and
guess
hopefully things won't stay that way, but I mean, it's been challenging for a while now.
personally, what I prefer is if it's, let's just say we move the threshold to 75, right? And in a case like this with the vehicles, wasn't a line item. And it, right,
I
I'm
just
just,
think either way,
right,
if it's above 75, it should come before the council. Public has an
Right.
opportunity to know.
right now it's 50, right?
A lot of it's just process and
Yeah.
so that the public can hear we're spending over $75,000 on this contract or whatnot. Not just, it's approved in a budget that takes a couple of days and one city council meeting and you see the items, but you're not discussing exact pricing or how it's going to be and not as fleshed out back in June, April, when we're doing the budget versus budget year. I think council members, especially newer council members that are going to be coming on board, it's helpful for them to see it come back before them. So that they see what's happening with the monies.
Well, in that case,
And it's just, it doesn't make any sense to have a limit if it's already been approved in budget, we're just going to deem that as by the council. I just don't think approving the budget means it's been approved, each individual expenditure within the capital improvements or non-capital contracts, means they've been approved. I think that especially over that limit. So those limits are there for a reason, so that there can be public input and people's representatives, which is the council, can take have a last look at it and say, that's how much that's costing.
well, in that case, personally, I think the 50K, I would feel comfortable with the 50K staying it, keeping it that way. And if it's going to complicate things of being in the budget or not in the budget, but I think expenditures after above 50K is something that I personally want to know what that is.
Mr. Mayor. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because I think that I don't know if there's some confusion on my part or confusion on everybody's part a little bit. The two things that are kind of being asked for here is one is raising the limits on both your capital and non-capital up to 75,000 to be allowed to buy whatever that's not in the budget, right? That's the
I
limits
mean-
or whether it's in the budget or not.
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, and
Raising
I'm not saying that it's not in the budget. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just saying there are things that could come up that maybe aren't explicitly spelled out, but yes, for the most part, it's going to be things that we've generally identified and that up to that amount, we could then go out and get for the city's needs
So
as needed.
It's just setting that limit for that. But then the other
Right.
piece of this is asking for anything that's a procurement in the budget currently. So say a purchasing of equipment or whatever else you're asking for, to be able to pass it through without council's authorization.
So like, for example, like when we talked about, good examples, maybe like the vac truck or something like that, where we spoke about it quite a bit, with council and then during the budget process, that it was explicitly approved and identified in the budget, that then we could go procure it and then essentially not have to do a second approval. It was just, again, it was
So
in our discussions, we were talking about trying to make it as efficient as possible.
here's the perfect example. A vacuum vac truck.
That's what she just said.
Oh, yeah, $500,000. Under the proposed language, as long as it came in within 15% of the budgeted amount, that purchase wouldn't come, or $500,000 wouldn't come back before the council for that purchase.
Is that for just those line items is what this is specifically saying?
We were just talking about things that were explicitly called out in the budget that would have been approved through that process.
I just wanted to clarify that there.
Right. That's all we were getting at, was just something like that.
The line item or not. Or could not. In the line items. Aren't. Threshold, they were still under this. That's kind of what I'm confused, like you're saying, it's in the budget, it's in the line item, and if you already approved it, so under the threshold, you don't have to. And if it doesn't happen that often, it's, item under the 5. And if it doesn't happen that often, but it's under the threshold, it still doesn't go to. Right? I mean, I'm just. It's just
I think that's why I was saying there's two different pieces to this. There's the number one piece is just the
The threshold.
threshold, right? So
75.
75, and right now currently it's sitting at 50 and 30. But the other piece of this is just a budget item that is for a line item. It's a procurement, right? So that's the second piece of this. And I think where the confusion there is that there's two different things. There's the threshold that's for any purchase, and then above that is the second piece.
Yeah, that's why I said for the threshold, I'm fine with moving it up to 75. But I disagree with the part where that if it's been adopted in the budget. Remember, when the council adopts a budget, we're adopting fund budgets. We're not adopting those line items within the budget. Those are planning portion of the city staff. Look at the resolutions. Those items aren't in the resolution. They're in the total budget as a backup. But what we are ultimately actually approving is what's in that ordinance, which is the funds themselves, each department. Now, there's certain limits like payroll, they can't go within a certain amount or whatnot. I just think for the bet, for, this is also transparency issue for me. When it's getting to that big of a number, it's on a public agenda, that people will see the city is buying this. It's coming through the agenda, being approved by the council. One more time, most people don't even know the budget are happening. How many times have we actually had non-budget committee members, non-staff members at a budget committee when they're not asking for certain funds, like community funds? So to me, it's, one, I just think it should come before the council, so they know what's happening. And two, transparency issue that the public has opportunity to see it's on the agenda. That we're spending $500,000 on a vac truck. That way, if they have questions, we're able to answer those questions as to why, very public way. And that, to me, that's transparency. So I will be opposed to any resolution that spells out the language in the proposed language. And we can consolidate the existing language to just 75. Comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with knocking it completely out because it was listed in a footnote
That makes sense.
I empathize with staff, specifically the Public Works Department, because this really does apply to you most of the time. Where you've put it in the budget, you've got the line item, you know it's gonna happen. And then it comes time and you need a second approval for it. And I know that that's become, or has been in the past, quite frustrating when, you know, you need triple approval on something that we already said, you know, explicitly in the line item that was approved. I understand the mayor's point of view, though, that if you're not paying attention during that budget adoption process, and you're looking at it more in big numbers, in terms of, you know, 3-digit or 6-digit numbers that Public Works gets for their budget and what the police gets for theirs. And sure, in that you've bullet pointed for us in the budget what specific things you hope to purchase that year, but then other things come up, or maybe it didn't work out. I know there's been a couple things as budgeted line items that then repeat themselves the next year because we just couldn't either do it or the opportunity wasn't there or something like that. So I definitely empathize and see both sides. I think it's a little bit just like redundant and petty sometimes, like when you come to us and it's like, we've heard this 3 times that you want to buy this thing, so just buy the thing, you know. I get that. But I also do see the other side of the example of the vac truck in a large amount of $500,000 that would be purchased without having to come back to us. I'm wondering if there's some sort of a balance to that where, you know, we've approved the budget. You're gonna, you know, let's just go back to the vac truck. You're gonna buy the vac truck. How do you communicate with, I mean, whether it's getting approval from us or not, how is there a way to communicate that that purchase is going to occur and at this price point? You know, council, you've already approved this purchase by adopting the budget, and this was an explicit line item. Is there a way to be communicative without needing a approval so that it is still on record and it's, I'm thinking it would be ridiculous if you or Dave came to us. You'd be here every meeting saying, I just want to let you know that we purchased X, Y, and Z. You know, they were under the 75, but we want to be transparent because we purchased it. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, you purchase things all the time that we need in the moment. I've written the checks. I mean, you go to Ace, you go to, like, we don't need to know every single thing you're buying. I'm from your perspective, what would you feel would be something that would make us feel comfortable, but also let you, and I'd be happy to have Dave come to the microphone as well, but. They are.
Yeah, no, so for me, since this does apply to me quite extremely, actually, where it's been a case and why the threshold to 75, I think would be beneficial is 2 years ago, we purchased a utility truck. That truck at the time cost $42,000. Planned on buying another one the next year. When we went to purchase it, that price jumped $20,000 to the T for the exact same truck. And so that pushed it to 62. By the time we would have came before council, dealer wouldn't hold it. So we were 3 weeks out on a next council agenda to do it. He said, absolutely not. There's just too tight of a market on this. So by raising that to 75, it gives us the flexibility to make an instantaneous purchase because that's just the way the market is. So I think for your compromise, I think just bringing the thresholds to that mark and staying above that, I have no problem personally coming to you guys. I wouldn't even consider buying a back truck without you, you know, endorsing that honestly. I just think that'd be crazy. So
That's
I
really.
think sort of for your compromise, if we could just plateau it and just say anything above, that's great.
That was exactly my.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is for like the TV stuff work that you guys approved at the last council meeting. We've been doing that for over 10 years. This is the first time it's ever had to come to you because now
Price is up.
we're just climbing up to that mark where never would
I
have
think
seen
10
it
years ago
before.
it did. So I think 10 years ago it did. Different rules. I think it was $5,000 back.
TV services?
No,
Oh,
for any
He's saying the
contract.
threshold.
Oh, no, I'm just saying we've never had to get approval for TV work, but we've been doing it for years. You just aren't aware because that's part of our maintenance program. It's been in the budget every time, but
It literally.
we're
was
just
5 or 10.
keeping up.
So I'm hearing you say that you feel you could continue to capitalize on opportunities that arise in front of you and make purchases as needed at that 75 mark. Those would, most vehicles or larger equipment would fall easily in that range and you could,
The large stuff, yeah, we would have no
Sure.
problem coming before you, as we should.
and I don't think even in the police department or anywhere, we would be buying a vehicle or of that nature over 70, we never hit that price
No, I
range for
think
any
even
sort
right
of.
now, a fully outfitted police vehicle is right around 60,000-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it's not going up a lot beyond that, but,
Sure.
but anyway, right now, that's about what it is after it's fully outfitted.
Great.
And that's why my point was just, I'm more than comfortable bringing it up to 75. Leave the language basically saying we just consolidate the 30, 50 and online and 70 has to come, it has to come. Council. I think that strikes that balance of budget responsibility, the budget's been approved, and transparency for those larger items. Like even Dave said that doesn't want to buy something that's that expensive without it having.
And I would just say too, that was just an example I could think of off the top of my head that was in the budget. I also would point out too that we're routinely or regularly coming in here with things that either are free or are well below the budget or well below my threshold, just because we do want you all making those decisions. So I do think we do go out of our way to try to be transparent and bring things before you.
I
And
never say it is, I never make something based on what you're doing right now.
yeah, no, I
always
understand.
look at- I'm going to be gone in a little over a month.
Sure.
Joe's going to be sitting here.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I'll be out there throwing darts. No, I'm just kidding. But, I think of 5 years down the road.
Sure.
I don't know, you might not be here, you might have gotten her to go city manager of the city of Portland, who's going to have one soon.
No thanks.
Maybe
Right,
you
right.
you-
No, I
rules and
that makes sense. I guess I just wanted to put on record that, we do really routinely try to bring things in front of you and be mindful of that. And sometimes they are below the thresholds and sometimes they're free. I mean, even the stuff with the new videos for the city, because we want to make sure that council's involved and it is a transparent process. We're just thinking of more like efficiency's sake for public works primarily, really, at the end of the day.
And I think that's why bringing it up to a level that's above what inflation has put it to. I mean, we live in a world that inflation is,
Yeah.
my retired friends are happy about the 9% increase until they realize that that's still 5% below
Yeah,
inflation.
I agree with the mayor.
I do as well.
sounds good.
All right.
So we take out
I
sentence
do
2.
not- Sorry. I'm in the world. I know, I can feel what you're, but, Counselor Miller did ask how much of are those purchases within, and this happened a year or 2 years ago, and this was very rare. And so I hate to put something in the resolution on paper and when it can be, it's permanently there and none of us are here and it can, so you guys, we trust you guys. We know you said you bring things over to us under the threshold. We get that. But if it's on paper, legally, whoever falls on the resolution does not have to have it set.
So
That's just
what do you want it to say instead?
I ideally would like to have the capital and non-capital just be the same. I don't know why it's 150, 130. 50 would be the same on both.
So you don't want to move it to 75 for both? You'd like to
I
do
think it's
at 50?
fine.
Even though he's saying,
Which is very rare and often, right? It happened.
Oh, no, so.
No,
no, it happens often.
So if we budget for police, so currently, with the current threshold, the past, bought a police car. If they're buying 2, they'd bring it to us mostly, but if they're just replacing 1 car under the resolution, as long as they got the 3 bids, they could buy it as long as it came in under 50,000, it used to. New ones are costing $62,000, so no matter what, if they're buying 1 police car at the $50,000 resolution, it would have to come before council. Utility truck is the same example, it was $40,000 2 years ago. Now it's 62,000, so it's above that threshold. So 2 years ago, they approved it in the budget. It's not a big piece of equipment, but it's just moving that threshold is more a recognition of where inflation has gone over the last 5 years. I mean, one could argue that the 50,000 limit for, it's the fifth state limit for
For prevailing wage.
prevailing wage should go up with inflation, but there's no way in the world this legislature would ever do that.
I understand the inflation. I understand that.
Well, and that's the whole thing, is inflation's causing,
Right.
we used to have a relatively controlled inflation. Right now, we don't.
I just, like you said, transparency, I just think any purchase above a 50 should be somehow documented. But there's a way that we can document publicly and be transparent about a purchase over 50,000 that, especially if it's not in a line item.
So at this point, I think you have the answers. You'll bring us something, and whether we approve or not unanimously, we'll move forward.
It's just one quick thing. Inflation from 2015 to 2022 was about 25%, almost 26% over the 7 years. So, I mean, if you just take that into calculation, I think you could easily get close to your 75,000 based on the same threshold. So I would agree with raising it to 75 across the board.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, you all. Thank you, Dave. Work session adjourned. Meeting will start at 7 o'clock.